and not able to attend a full-fledged 4-year, 3-year program, right? So interventions like this, where they're able to access mentors. Imagine a student sitting in Haryana and getting access to a mentor from Harvard. The kind of motivation that can generate for those students to not drop out from the middle and high school level and continue their education. So that is another thing about bridging the access gap, and also, of course, all the skill gap that I was talking about. So that's the overall context. Now, what we can do to address some of these challenges, if we can move to the next slide. Yes. So this is another report that came out from the World Economic Forum just very recently. And I'll actually, when we talk about the projects later, I want you to keep this in mind so that you see the kind of skills that are highlighted, which will be important for the future. How many of these skills you think will be imparted through the project-based learning approach, right? So that's something I want you to all keep a lookout for, because by 2030, World Economic Forum says the most important skill for any person to be employed in the workforce is going to be creative thinking, right? Which probably goes against conventional wisdom. We always think, data, analytical thinking, which is also important, but creative thinking is right up there. Technological literacy is right up there, and curiosity and lifelong learning, which we also talked about in the morning. So these are skills which students, we think, are able to access much better when they take projects and real world problems right from the high school level. So that's something about the skills. Now, I want to stop here a little bit and take you through a real project that we did with the students, so you get a flavor of how students work when we introduce a project to them. So we'll play this video for 2 minutes. It's a short clip, and then I'll invite Anil to talk about projects. Previous slide. Yes.
At first glance, you'd think these kids were attending a routine computer science class. But Guha, Kamlesh, Jayesh and Avnish, 11th grade students of DAV Boys School in Chennai, are actually busy improving on a software platform they developed earlier this year. A software that helps autistic children understand facial expressions. All it took was a laptop, some scratch code, and time spent training a computer to understand the link between words and human emotion. Children with autism face difficulties when it comes to social interaction and communication, thanks to a series of repeated thought and behavioral patterns on account of a neurodevelopmental condition. Typically, these children have difficulty while performing tasks considered simple by many, like reading facial expressions. Now that's where Avnish, Jay...
So they're pausing it so that they can play it from YouTube directly. So it means it will take 2 minutes and 27 seconds to do it, because we need to be precise. But as they're setting it up, I just wanted to give the background to what this project was. Is, we use a lot of fancy words. By the way, everybody can hear me. I know you can all see me very well. From last year to this year, hair has not grown. It's the same. So what I wanted to say is that we use a lot of fancy words. Okay, we say reflective inquiry, analytical thinking, empathy, and inclusive learning. I mean, all of which are makes me sound very important, makes whoever is saying these things very important, right? We'll say systems thinking, analytical thinking, this, that, whatever. Critical, for example, critical thinking. Okay. I have asked different people this question to define critical thinking. It is so interesting to me that each person has their own definition for critical thinking. And what is interesting about it is none of it has used critical thinking to give the definition of critical thinking, right? Some people say thinking which is critical, which is my favorite answer. This is like going back to undergraduate when, I did economics and there used to be a course called public finance. And the professor used to start by saying, public finance is financing the public. Okay. Because beyond the point, with so much of information hitting you, right? It's like going on Netflix and you have 45 binge-worthy shows to choose from. You don't know what to do. So one of the main things about project-based learning and why project-based learning is becoming not just essential, but probably the way, is because the only way you learn most effectively is by doing. Right? Words, 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 words. But when I actually do, right? So think about it. No, I can't learn driving by correspondence. Everybody's agreed on this topic. Although when you look at the traffic in some of our cities, it looks like some people have learned driving by correspondence, right? Similarly, you cannot, you can't say that I will learn everything I need to learn about, say, computational AI or something by not ever having tried an AI application or trying some kind of a practical exercise in AI. Right? I can't just read it from a textbook. We know this. But by the time we get to that realization, you're already in first or second year college when it's too late to get into a habit of doing if that habit of doing has not been cultivated early. That's those 8 beautifully put together points by Akshay was that, right? That you learn best by doing. This project meant a lot to us. Why does it mean a lot to us? Because it was looking at one of the conversations I had just now at lunch is how are we taking this to children who are differently abled? How are we taking this to children who are differentially abled, right? What is differently abled, differentially abled? I mean, Poonam Prakash is sitting right here, so I don't want to get into definitions. She's better equipped to answer this than me. But differently abled, we all understand. Differentially is even within disability, there are varying degrees, there are varying different types. You can't have, we have a program for the differently abled. Each thing is different. Now, talking about it theoretically is one thing, but imagine if children could think of solutions for other children on their own, right? What do I learn out of that? I learn empathy and inclusive learning without having to teach it, without having to put that in words. Correct? Number one. Number two, if I am saying that these are children like you and they're going to learn, and I put that stakeholder group in front of these children, the immediacy and the urgency of that problem is in front of you. It's no longer a theoretical exercise that ma'am has set for us, which is due next Saturday and it carries 20 points, but it's optional. इसके अलावा waste management भी कर सकते हैं. It is not that. क्यों? Because CBSE ने बोला है. No. Okay. We need to do this practically, right? So we came up with that solve. We said, let's look at real problems that children are facing, real problems that the world is facing that children can observe. If you start from a problem, right? Let's not call it a problem. Let's call it a challenge. Saying problem is problematic. Let's call it a challenge. Just start with a challenge, right? Traffic in the road is a challenge. It's a challenge that's going to be becoming more and more of a challenge. Learning is a challenge. Inclusive learning is a bigger challenge. India is a challenge of challenges, right? We have so many challenges. We start with a challenge. And then I start breaking that down into constituent steps. Akshay will take you through the way we do that. It becomes a very interesting way in which you're looking at something that's urgent, that's critical thinking, okay? Urgent, that's critical, but requires actual problem solving. And why is this important? Why should this be required? Because, and Rishi is going to tell you this shortly, Rishi is a far more intelligent professor than I can ever be. Okay, he's smiling wryly for that. We are missing you very much here in person, Rishi. I just wanted to say that before you come on. He's a far more intelligent guy than me. Is that like he and I teach undergraduate college. So I'm a professor, he's a professor, we are all professors at Krea University, apart from me running Kruu. Is that when we take in the students that you're all sending to us, right? Even the most academically gifted ones, right? Often are not able to put themselves in a driver's seat in being able to look at a problem critically, analyze how I would go about solving it, and most importantly, they seem not to want to collaborate with other people, right? I wanted to say this to all of you. This is some great news. It was not released along with the student survey report this morning. It's a very big release. Flash news, hot in the pan, even more flash news than Pragnananda winning. I wanted to tell you all that the world, I don't know if he's won. Has he won?
Not yet.
No. मुंह में शक्कर ना तो शायद हो जाए. चेन्नई का लड़का है. I want him to win. Okay. So I wanted to say that this is great flash news for all of you. The future of the world is collaborative. Okay. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that you will always have lovely people whom we love very much to work with. We are usually going to have people whom we don't like. I love you, but I don't like you. Not that category of people. Why? Because you're always going to be working in cross-functional groups. You're going to be working in groups which are split across countries. You talk to Kala here. She's working across continents, across geographies. She'll tell you the challenges, right? Sometimes I know that she's on a meeting at 2 a.m. in the morning and talking to people you don't necessarily get along with, but you have to get jobs done. And sooner or later, you need to start developing on the job. And many of you are, all of you are working in school, so you know exactly what I mean by saying we have to work in groups, especially with people mostly we like, but sometimes not like also. Okay? Karna hi padta hai. Okay, don't have a choice. It is interesting to me that when we say it, there are parents coming to me and saying, but my child should do this separately. I don't want him mixing with, wo variety. Wo variety kya hota hai? What am I selling? Tomato? Right? There are parents who write to us and say, but my child did all the work on the project and you have given certificates to the other children in the group as well. So please take the certificates back from them. To which I always say, sure, but I will give you that job. You talk to the other parents and convince them that their children did not do any work, right? This is a big challenge in the 21st century, jokes apart. We do not know how to, and thanks to social media, we don't know how to disagree with each other also, right? If one of you, right, if Ashu is sitting there suddenly says, I made upma, the only thing I can say is, oh bro, yummy. Oh, wonderful. You are so gifted. I'm not allowed to say, Arey, why are you sharing such bekar information on the net? I can't say that because immediately say, how dare you say that? Oh, you must be left wing. I am right wing. All this will start. Because we don't know how to collaborate. You know the irony? Facebook is a collaborative social media network. Right? So the reason I was giving you, if this is set up, by the way, I'm just doing stand-up entertainment until this is getting set up. I know Akshay Jain is very captivated by my speech, but the idea was that you would actually tell them to see that it's playing very well. Work kar raha hai? Collaboratively, we have to work. Critical thinking mein. Problem solving, ye to ho gaya. This is Kruu in motion. I love it.
At first glance,
Oh,
you
it's
think
working.
these kids
So
were
this
attending
is a group of children
computer
in
science
Chennai.
class. But Guha, Kamlesh,
They've
Jayesh
done a
and
machine
Avnish,
learning solution,
11th
machine
grade
learning
students of DAV
of
Boys School
developing
in
a
Chennai
platform
are
for
actually
children with
busy
autism
improving
to
on a
express
software
emotion.
platform they developed earlier this year. A software that helps autistic children understand facial expressions. All it took was a laptop, some scratch code, and time spent training a computer to understand the link between words and human emotion. Children with autism face difficulties when it comes to social interaction and communication, thanks to a series of repeated thought and behavioral patterns on account of a neurodevelopmental condition. Typically, these children have difficulty while performing tasks considered simple by many, like reading facial expressions. Now that's where Avnish, Jayesh, Guha and Kamlesh's ideas enter the picture. They decided to teach a machine learning program how to read facial expressions, which could then in turn help an autistic child cope with deciphering these non-verbal cues. The idea stems from a simple yet crucial concept.
Initially, we created these 5 labels, 5 emotions, and then we went about forming prominent examples for these. For example, I really like the rain today. It is an expression of happy. So we put that under happy, so the machine clearly knows that if a person enters this sentence, it will categorize it under happy and help the autistic person express that emotion.
Over time, they kept categorizing new sentences under emotions like happy, anxious, sad, and more, while training the machine to understand them and emote accordingly.
Huge tech giants, when they make machine learning programs, they actually feed their program billions of data. But due to a time crunch, we didn't have that much of time to feed it that much data. We only were able to feed it 200 or 300 sentences.
The idea, they say, came from a 21-day project overseen by Chennai-based edutech platform Kruu. The startup believes that with 2.2 lakh students on its platform, the possibilities for more such innovation are endless.
I couldn't be more thrilled that these are students who are 14 or 15 years old, who without being told what empathy is and without being told what it means to work for the sake of other children, have done it automatically, and technology has made this possible.
Back at school, these boys are far from done. They're now working on a Python version of their machine learning tool, which means greater accuracy and the capability to input, collate and process a lot more data quicker. For Guha, Kamlesh, Jayesh and Avnish, the project and its success has not automatically meant that they are actively looking at becoming tech founders. For them, it's still about using this technology to reach children.
So, so sweet. Okay. And I'll tell you why this was sweet for us for three reasons. One is, of course, that this was made possible, right? That you could actually have children working on solutions for children. Shall I tell you what's fantastic? The four of them are not from computer science. Okay. Number one. Number two, none of them have ever coded anything before this project started. So how did they learn to code in 3 weeks? Secret. That's all the time it takes. Okay. For whoever has launched degree programs with lots of millions of dollars on coding, 3 weeks, 15-year-olds, kar diya. But of course, they're from Chennai, and people from Chennai are very, very bright. Okay. वो तो है. But having said that, right, the fact that they could express empathy, right, without, and the third most significant thing is this was made possible through this idea that we had. We have professors giving them just a small input, right? What is the professor giving an input do? It's not a class. They're just telling them to think about a problem in a specific way and giving them certain tools. It means we are pushing the children into the pool and saying, तैरना सीखो, खुद सीखो, right? Why is this important? Because that's the only way the world is going to progress, right? Krish was talking about that morning, about it this morning. For those of you who are hearing the inaugural speech, the only reason that he mentioned me so many times is because I used to bully him in school. Okay, that's the only reason, right? But he was talking about computational creativity, very, very similar. Akshay and I were exchanging notes, sitting there saying, this is exactly what we're saying. This is what children have been able to do, right? What else does this do? It obviously is bringing top professors directly in touch with students, top universities directly in touch with students, because why should this be interesting for a university? It's interesting for a university because a guy, a set of students like this, they could be Haryana based, they could be Guwahati based, they could be Trivandrum based, they could be from Male, they could be from anywhere. But doesn't matter what the background is, doesn't matter what their ability is, they're suddenly all getting access to the best people from across the world. And not only have access, they're getting access also, if they do well, to more and more mentoring opportunities, more and more opportunities for them to progress. The benefits, I don't even have to tell you, it's obvious. But let me now stop, give it back to Akshay, right? To give the rationale and then put in Rishi. Rishi Vyas, apart, as I said, he's one of our most sought after faculty at Krea. And I pulled him into this project because Rishi is a mathematician. Maths is one of the biggest gabras for all children. Okay, it's a bigger gabra for parents, biggest gabra for teachers and counselors. Okay, and there are going to be sessions on where mathematics is omnipresent because we are living in a data science world. We are living in a data-led world. Now, in Krea, for example, Rishi hones a subject called mathematical reasoning. We call it reasoning. We do not call it mathematics. Okay, because it is about thinking through problems, right? The way universities are also now beginning to, I, for example, am working together with another professor on structuring a course called Music and Data Science, right? This is the kind of work that's beginning to happen at universities. Now, there's no point in saying, haan, 12th mein usne C++ kiya, usne Python kiya, abhi to he can handle this. It doesn't work like that. Have we imparted reasoning? Have we imparted, and that comes through project-led learning, right? That's the reason that we started it like this. In one shot, access ka problem is solved. In one shot, critical thinking and problem solving. And one shot, the world of universities opens up to these students because many of them are coming from places where they may have just heard of that university. They would have never had that access, right? What I'm proudest about are children coming in from some of the tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, right? Semi-rural, right? There was a school in the Nilgiris, right? Where they don't have devices. So the children trek up a hill and they have taken over the cinema theater. And the project lecture is coming through that cinema theater and all these children wearing sweaters and mufflers and coats, single file, holding each other's hands, are going and attending that lecture and they're cracking these problems, right? It's not happening only in our fancy schools, it's happening in these schools. And that's what technology makes possible. But I mean, everything's fixed now. Okay, I'll shut up. Back to Akshay Jain. Okay, so Akshay, if you can carry on project-led learning and then Rishi.
Yes. So thank you, Anil. It's very hard to match your energy and your humor. But so basically, I think Anil has given you a very broad sweep of how project-led learning works. Maybe I'll give you a little bit more sort of fine-tuning of how we set up these projects and what is the process from beginning to end. So basically, we collaborate, and Rishi is going to talk about that. We collaborate with professors across India, across the world, and we identify what is their expertise area and how do they think about problems in their field. What are the emerging challenges? If let's say they're doing, urban planning, we did a project with IIT Madras on urban planning for Indian cities. So he was working on architecture. He was working on structures which can be built overnight and then removed as required. So that was for disaster planning and so on. So we offered that project to students, and students built prototypes using cardboards, using different material. So that's how we approach our projects. We identify an area with the faculty member. They come on board, they deliver a lecture, which is usually 40-45 minutes on our platform, which is, as Anil was saying, broadcast across all the schools that are participating. And these sometimes can be very remote schools. They may not have access to computers. They go to different places to access that. Once the lecture is done, then there is 21 days of students working with each other. So the project is delivered online, but the work actually happens physically. So it again combines very beautifully elements of online technology, but also working in person collaboratively, as Anil was speaking about, with groups in your own school. So that's when you come together, discuss the problem, what is the project, and the students can interpret it in their ways because the guidance is very minimal. The project lecture is to tell them this is the problem, this is how academics are thinking about it, but what do you think about it in terms of your own local context? So students work for 21 days, then they deliver their output to us through the platform. And this 21 days is also very scaffolded. So we create worksheets for them. We create assignments for them. We have access to our own research assistants, which are again undergraduate students. So if there are challenges, doubts, they handhold them. So all of this happens over 21 days through a very scaffolded approach. And then when they submit the projects, we assess every single of the output that we receive. And top 5%, we take it back to the faculty. And many times the faculty are so impressed with the suggestions that students have come up with. They offer them internship, they offer them mentorship. And actually, for example, this project of AI for ML for autistic children, they want to launch their own product and the faculty has agreed to mentor them. So the idea is you start with a project, but it can actually lead to innovation and entrepreneurship where students solve not only for our cities, but also for their own peers in terms of learning. So I'll stop now. I'll maybe bring in Rishi. Rishi, if you can hear us, maybe let's talk about your project and I'll come to digital health later. But this project was very interesting. It was curated for us by Rishi. I'll invite him now to share a little bit about how he thought about the project and how he delivered it on the platform. And then maybe how it also allows students to think about mathematics at the college level. So Rishi, if you can hear us, and if we can get Rishi's visual on the screen.
Sure.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Akshay, and thank you, Akshay and Anil, for that wonderfully kind introduction. I'm very sorry that I can't be in Hyderabad with all of you today. It would have been a wonderful experience to have been there in person. So this project that I worked with Anil and Akshay to develop was on making maths fun. And I mean, as Anil has already mentioned, right, mathematics is one of those subjects which people have incredibly diverse experiences with when they study it in school. I mean, some students really enjoy it from the moment they see it, they stick with it, they think about the ideas, and they study it throughout their high school career. Others, run away screaming the very first chance they get from the subject. So what the project that I worked with Anil and Akshay on was how to, in some sense, communicate to students that mathematics is not just something that you might see in your textbooks or in, these somewhat contrived exercises that we all come up with to teach many of the topics that we do, but is something that, exists around us. It exists in the objects that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, in the manner in which those objects behave. And it also exists in the scenarios that we find ourselves in regularly. So the short presentation that I gave for this project was centered around two examples, very, very simple ones. The first was taking something which, everybody, irrespective of their experiences, would have interacted with, and that was a bicycle. And talking about how some very simple mathematics, basic manipulation of fractions, along with a basic, or a small dollop of physics, explains why bicycle gears work the way they work. Why, when you're sort of cycling up a hill, you get into a certain gear, when you're going down, you get into a different one. And the reason why you can sort of gain some prediction or predictive power over how your bike is going to behave based on some very simple mathematical manipulations. The other example that we considered was what's visible here in this slide. I'm going to apologize. I drew this, and this is a evidence for why I never became an artist myself. So sorry about that. It's this wonderful mathematical puzzle inspired by a game show called the Monty Hall problem, which I'm sure many of you have come across. And the basic idea, I think there was an Indian version called Khulja Simsim as well, 20 or 30 years ago. And the basic idea is that you have these three doors. Behind one of them is something of value like a car. Behind the others, you might have something like a pair of goats. And the doors are closed to begin with. The participant picks one of the doors. The host then opens another door which does not have the car behind it, and then asks the participant whether they want to switch. And I mean, a moment's thought would suggest that when the host has opened one of the doors, the participant is confronted with two closed doors. One has a goat, one has a car. So it doesn't matter which one they choose. But some pretty easy mathematical reasoning and some easy probability theory, in fact, tells us that you should always make the switch. And this is a great example of how you can use mathematical reasoning to arrive at conclusions that are useful, but also counterintuitive, and how we can use math to sort of better understand not just the objects that we interact with, but the kinds of scenarios that we find ourselves in. Akshay, could I request you to move to the next slide, please?
Yes, I'm just gonna, yes.
Yeah, so the project then for the students, if I answer correctly, was to figure out or find examples of mathematics in the kinds of scenarios that they're surrounded by, or the kinds of objects that they interact with, and investigate that. So, I mean, I'm sure the projects that students have submitted have been excellent examples of, how we can use mathematical reasoning to better understand the world around us. And the two examples that were just mentioned over here are great examples of why learning to reason mathematically is an important skill, right? Because it helps us understand the world better. It helps us gain an appreciation for how things work. It helps us gain some degree of predictive power over how things are going to work or turn out in the future. But it also allows us to spend some time thinking about some very beautiful ideas. Now, as Anil already mentioned, right, if you were to design or teach a course called mathematical reasoning, it's not mathematics. You're not sort of teaching calculus or algebra or probability. So the focus for, these sorts of programs wouldn't necessarily be learning a specific topic, because the aim isn't to come away with a knowledge or understanding over some specific mathematical discipline, but rather just spend some time thinking about math and learning what it means to think about mathematics. When we start teaching students at the university level, right, it's often a dramatic shock for students when they start seeing math done in universities or colleges, because while there are many sort of places of continuity from the way they've seen math in schools, there are also certain differences. There is an increasing sophistication of tools and concepts, irrespective of whether, they are taking mathematics as potential mathematics majors, so they're learning the subject for its own sake, or taking mathematics courses as part of, economics programs, computer science programs, data science programs in the other sciences. Because irrespective of what the eventual motivation is, there is this need to internalize and work within a complex framework for description and justification that is different from what they might have seen before, right? In addition, the India in particular is in the middle of a new educational paradigm, the new education policy being implemented across the country. And that's also encouraging, or in many cases requiring, students to come back to maths after they've left it at various points in their school career. And that's something, for example, I think Anil mentioned, this course that I teach often has students who've left mathematics 2 years ago, sometimes even 4 years ago. And suddenly they find themselves confronted with it again. And it can be quite an experience, right? You're seeing a subject that you thought you hadn't seen before for whatever reason, and you're being forced to engage with it again. And so those in many ways sort of encapsulate the kind of struggles that students face, right? They're seeing tools that might be familiar, but used in different ways. They're being asked to investigate or study these tools to a different level of depth. And in many cases, they're being asked to engage with ideas that they thought they were done with, because they were like, oh, I never wanted to see math again, but here I am sitting in your classroom. Why am I here? What's going on? So the fourth point on this slide, how can students better prepare the school level, is a really interesting one, right? Because I mean, the obvious answer that I want to say is just to listen to your teachers when they're talking to you. I know, I mean, it's often, I mean, we face this in our classes, that students often, think of the material that they're engaging with as a means to eventually passing an exam and getting a certain grade. And the question is, how do we encourage them to say, no, the exam is just one part of it. It's just a measure of one aspect of what you're getting out of this. How can you actually encourage students to sit there and listen to the kind of excitement that an educator brings to their classroom, right? To actually engage and listen to their teachers and students. And I think that's one of the great advantages of bringing in a project-led learning framework, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want students to be excited about something, they have to be invested in it. They need to be invested in some way in the ideas that they're studying. And making students spend time, particularly in a collaborative fashion, as Anil said, with other students, studying these ideas has the potential to make students really sort of care about what they're learning. And that might then translate into enjoyment and into a serious investment, which means that some of the ideas that they come across actually stick with them. Yeah, I'm happy to sort of take the session further after the remaining slides.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rishi. And I think one thing which I remember very clearly from Rishi's session when he delivered this project on our platform, most of the questions were not about the project itself, they were actually about, if we were taught math like this, we would definitely sign up for your class. We would definitely want to take up math further in university. Because it was for many students the first time where math was introduced in the concept or in the way of a challenge like the multi-hole problem, which is a very exciting counterintuitive sort of probability puzzle. So students were quite excited, and we're just going through all the things that students have submitted. They've started looking at everything from a chair to an algorithm that they run on Facebook to the pixels on the screen. All of these, of course, require mathematics. So mathematics in the everyday, that for them became fascinating, because I remember when I was also studying mathematics, the biggest question was, if I'm doing algebra, why am I learning this, right? Why are these variables there? What is the practical use of it? Can I just get done with this and then not study math again? But when you start introducing this at the school level itself through projects and making it relevant to, okay, the bicycle that you're driving, the screen that you're seeing, the algorithm that is suggesting a friend to you on Facebook, all of these are related to mathematics, and behind the hood is actually simple probability. That's when students start realizing, okay, this is not as irrelevant as I thought. And if I have teachers who can introduce it this way, then I might want to study mathematics further. So that is something that we've realized by introducing subjects like mathematics. We did a project, which I said I'll talk about, and this was really the project from Harvard on digital health, right? And one of the projects that or points that you saw earlier, which was about breaking disciplinary silos, and we talk about multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and that has become, of course, a big part of what we speak about. But when you're doing a project, tell me, is the project on mathematics only about mathematics? When you're looking at a chair, is it only math? When you're looking at artistic creativity in building an innovative chair, you're looking at the materials that you're using. So automatically, when you're working on a real world problem, it's not restricted to one discipline at all. Just like Anil said, without telling students to be empathetic, by doing the project, they learn to be empathetic. Without telling the students multidisciplinarity, when they're working on a real world problem, they have to consult various disciplines. They can't restrict themselves to only mathematics. So that is the beauty of the project-based approach. Perhaps we'll pause there. I'll pass it over to Anil, and if you have questions, we'll be happy to. No questions yet. Yes, entertainment is back. So, no, I have to thank Rishi because, first of all, I wish math professors were like that, right? So they made it sort of fun and interactive, and but more than anything else, I think what we have been trying to say, and I'm very, very fond of these abbreviations because I want you all to have key takeaways.
because everybody will be going there for coffee and then saying, what is the main takeaway? Okay. So the main takeaway, other than the food takeaway, is I will put it into 5 very simple terms. Okay. The first one, the future of the world, is C for collaborative, right? So please mark it with a C, right? Whoever wants to write it and has a pen and pad, right? Other people who are dozing off, that's fine. The people who are talking on the phone and WhatsApping each other, that's also fine. But WhatsApp maybe C, like up. Okay. So C, which is collaborative. That's the first sort of learning. And we find that the very same children who complained कि इसके साथ मुझे काम नहीं करना है, I don't want to be in this group. Sir, can you put my best friend is in the other section? Can I do? The same people are coming back and saying that we really enjoy this. Okay. We still don't like them, but we work very well. Right. Second, right. And that collaboration is not just between students. Higher education and high schools need to collaborate. That is why IC3 is there. That is why all of this is there. But even not just at the level of admissions and scholarships and all of those things, which are important, because that's once you get or once you start getting. But how do you even know what I want to do? One of the fundamental questions that a child asks at the age of 12 or 13, right? When they're beginning to get interested in, I want to be a writer, right? And I think this is a very interesting study. I don't know if you read this. You ask a child when he's 3 or 4 years old what he wants to be, they will say, I want to be an airline pilot. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be president of all the trees, right? And engine driver, right? Because it's also, and at that time, of course, our only expression is, oh, so cute. Because in our mind, we're saying, he doesn't know, he's only 3 years old. Because who started telling children that things are impossible, we only. We forgot that we were also children once, right? And by the time the same child has grown to about 12 or 13, they start saying, engineer banna hai, doctor banna hai, chartered accountant banna hai. Really? You want to be a chartered accountant? Like you wake up every morning and yes, that's making me so passionate. Every time I want to feel down, I think of debits and credits. So now I'm smiling again. Why are they saying this? This is happening because children don't do what you tell them to do. Children do what you do. Okay. So they don't know. And that is the age at which they're beginning to think about what can I do? But more importantly, what do I not want to do? Right? We've had very interesting action and I used to run interviews and with Rishi, and I'm missing Rishi very much on this, the three of us running interviews when Krea was first getting set up and we had children. And I'll never forget children who were coming in with 499 out of 500 in CBSE, right? How do you get 100% in English, yeah? Okay. The first time I'm seeing marks like 100% in English or Shakespeare, I mean, like, how did this work? Anyway, that child, and these are children coming in with such high marks. And they've done everything. Model United Nations, they have done. They have done all kinds of extracurricular programs. The child climbed a mountain and he was beaten the Tenzing Norgay's record. The child took a gun and he has won archery competition. The parents made sure they invested in an outdoor co-curricular program such that he can now do entrepreneurship, incentive things, innovation. They can work with ropes and build a Taj Mahal. But they don't know what they want to do in college. Okay, this was a common problem. Everybody we used to go through essays together and grade them, and he used to pass his to me, and I used to pass his to me, saying, really, we've done all of these things? Like, we are like such underachievers. Yeah, what is going on with this generation? Right? And they're all coming with very prepared answers. Writing, what do you want to do? I'd love to be in computational physics. Really? Like, what does that mean? And then you probe a little deeper and you find that that's not really coming from the child, right? I will never forget the case study of a child who, said, I want to do physics. And I was sitting with one of our professors of physics. And this professor of physics decided we will ask him questions on physics. And not questions on physics from 12th standard, NCERT, CBSE, NCF approved chapter 3 point number 4. Okay. Taki wo 100% mil jaye. No. He decided to ask him practical questions like Rishi was saying about the physics of everyday objects. The first question, he answered correctly. Second question, he started saying, actually, sir, I'm not sure. Can you give me a hint? So then Third question, did not know. Fourth, then finally the professor looked at the child and said, why do you want to do physics then? Kyunki papa ne kaha. Right? Because he didn't want to do engineering, he's come to liberal arts, and it's not nice to say I want to do arts and all. So arts se kya career milegi, right? This world is changing, right? And we asked that child and we said, what do you really want to do? He wants to be in films, not acting. He wanted to be a film producer. He was interested in design. He was interested in visual communication and things like that. Many things are happening. So one of the simple solves we said is, one, bring the access, right? Bring the access to these people. There are as many universities. So at the moment, Kruu, for example, we have 47 different universities and professors who are part of the platform. Thanks to one very serendipitous meeting with the director of the National Science Foundation of the United States, by the way, there are 37,334 professors in the US who are from India. I know, right? 37,344 we have exported. Okay. So we said, and it's only the US. If I include Canada, I mean, Kala will have better statistics, but if I include Canada, I'll have Australia and New Zealand. If I include the rest of the world, it's probably going to lakhs. Okay. We can bring them back. Not physically, because they're all living in suburban America, have large SUVs and got lovely mortgages. So we can't bring them physically back, right? And many of them have started talking very differently, right? So, but what we can do, right? But what we can do is take a little bit of time out of them and have them start spending that time with our children, right? If we do that, right? Why should South Asia be left behind? Yeah, okay. We have the brightest. Let's start pushing it forward, and therefore the access gap reduces. So the first C I gave you was collaboration. Okay. Second, H. Okay, happiness. It is not there in the NEP also. I looked at NEP, but happiness is not there as subject. Ma'am has said 7th period we have to do happiness class. लेकिन नहीं है, तो कैसे करें? Okay, and you realize that the most important things for a child, right? How to motivate yourself and how to love yourself is not there. And the only way that can come is by self-discovery. If at the age of 12 or 13, you start the process of beginning to discover who you are, think about it. Such that by the time you're 15 or 16, you not only knew what you wanted to do, but most importantly, you knew what you did not ever want to do. You have already begun the wonderful process of falling in love with yourself. Most important person to fall in love with. There are not a single Bollywood song which is about self-love. Hello? तेरी मेरी प्रेम कहानी मेरी प्रेम कहानी खुद पे, right? It is not there. Happiness, right? And that comes through discovery by doing. It will not come by saying you should be happy from tomorrow, you should be happy from everybody smile now. It doesn't come like that. You have to feel happy about it. Third, interdisciplinarity, right? Although in the university that I'm still a professor and Rishi is in, we call it interwovenness. Okay. Everything is about interdisciplinarity. Like he said, there's no problem for which you need only one subject to solve the problem. You need several, right? Interdisciplinarity. Third and fourth, sorry. Love. I know this is not the word you came in expecting Harvard to Haryana project-led learning methods for the 21st century. Okay. Love that. Love for what? Of course, yourself, that is already covered. But love for the subject that you want to get into. Love se hona chahiye. Sirf nafs nahi, loved. Okay, sorry for the non-Hindi speakers. By the way, I'm Tamilian, I'm from Chennai. See? Okay. Love. How do you inculcate love for something? It's not going to come because I gave you a thick 65-page manual. After this, you must love engineering. That is not going to happen. Right? That love will also come only with meeting, getting. So when Rishi talks to you about mathematics, you will start learning to love mathematics. After Rishi leaves the room, again the love goes down. Then you bring Rishi back into the room, love goes up again. Right? Constant mentoring in a structured way with the world's best mentors will bring that love into what you do and will take you further and further, closer and closer to your destiny. And the last word, the power to dream, D. Right? The biggest gift we can give as counselors, as teachers, as parents is the ability for the dream of being president of the trees a reality. In fact, thanks to Kala, we ended up working with somebody who was already a colleague of ours, with APRI, Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment, where the project is how do you become the president of the trees? How do you work for the environment? How do you work on ecology? And there are at least 10 children that have done that project out of the 16,000 who did that project, who want to be intern with a tree. They want to go and work in environments and habitats. They want to go to the Nilgiris and work on wildlife conservation. Their parents did not even know that these opportunities existed. So collaboration, happiness, interdisciplinarity, love, and learning to dream. CHILD. Thank you very much. We are done. Okay, so now we shall have questions. Poonamji.
Like even for the project that the DAV kids, they were given a problem or they are also taught to ideate? Where does it begin? Are they given the problem?
We gave the problem in terms of look at children who find learning difficult, right?
Oh, and
so
then
we said, and these children honed in on autism.
Wow. So they had kids in school with autism or some
I-
awareness maybe.
We don't know where it came from. So in fact, what is interesting is, so I think he was going to show you the Harvard Wala slide, because Harvard Wala, can I go to the Harvard Wala slide? So in fact, the project we did with Professor Vish was, it's the next one, right? Yeah, on digital health, Poonam, the professor gave the problem as, design a wireframe for an app that will help humans to live longer. Okay. One child in a school in Assam, very bold, unmuted herself during the lecture and said, "But sir, why?" And he stopped in his tracks and he said, "Can you repeat the question?" She said, "Why should humans live longer? Humans are a disgrace to this planet. And I do not find a single person who's living longer and longer doing nice things or being happy. They're only going and irritating everybody else. Having to take a look at our politicians." Right? And she was right. The good thing about working with people in higher education in some of the top universities is how open they are to learning, right? So he said, "Okay, I agree with you, young lady. So you tell me how you want to change the project." She said, "For as long as you are alive, let's make it a healthy life. Isn't there a better way to frame the project?" And he said, "Done. Your wish is granted." So sometimes, and his name is Vish, so the wish was granted. Okay. So what I will say is that people who are my colleagues, please excuse, you all have to live with this. But the thing is, these are things that children have done on their own. Who have done this? 8th standard kids. This is from a school in Ghaziabad. 8th standard kids have done this. We did not teach them how to do this. We have not given any textbook. They did this. They have understood wireframing. They downloaded the materials we gave, because we just gave them a swimming pool and said, "Go jump." They jumped, right? And because you're allowing them to do it at their terms, they take a greater interest, right?
But I also feel that children who don't come from very privileged schools have made use of this better than the
Much
privileged
better.
ones.
And you and I have already spoken about that, right?
Yes.
I think we have an information and I would say a luxury glut in some of our privileged schools, because they're getting too much that they don't see the value. But I think, yeah, some question in the back. Yeah, no, Akshay, you don't have to run.
Yeah, I'm Lakshmi Shah from Manthan School. I was very, the example that you gave, where the kid said he wants to do in physics, something in physics, that's very relatable. I have a question there, because I experienced a similar situation. When I went to a guide, he said, "What do you want to do?" A very specific theoretical high energy physics, not even experimental.
Theoretical?
High energy physics. Didn't know what that was. But then, it sounded very interesting, like something that people with a lot of expertise would do. When you're coming from a place of superficial understanding, how crucial do you think it is to give the student a reality by, at the same time not demotivate?
I think you answered your own question. I think it is extremely crucial. I'm going to rephrase your question itself. It's extremely crucial to give them a reality bite, because And it's better to give it to them in a non-threatening environment, like doing a project, right? Because yeah, it's not a competitive exam. It's not any of those things. I wish we could do away with competitive exams, right? But that's not going to happen in our lifetime. India is a culture of exclusionist learning because we have 100,000 children applying for 1,000 seats and things like that. There are colleges which keep 100% as the cutoff and things like that. So it's always threatening. But in a project-led learning situation where you're actually trying to develop the skill, right? Supposing, let's say there is a theoretical high energy physics project being given by University of California, San Diego, by the way, that is happening. And you end up choosing that, you'll realize that that's not what you thought it was. Or maybe you'll realize that that is what exactly you want it to be. And you've learned to discover. It's what I said earlier, right? You've started discovering it on your terms, right? And if you do the project, will also big deal. Nothing's going to happen, right? You just got an experience and that's about it, right? So I think it's extremely crucial because I think the danger is in getting into something which you don't even know what it is, and then realizing a little too late, and after a little too much investment has been made, that this is not what was meant for you, get into a job which makes that situation even worse, right? And stick with it because you don't have a choice, become 40, have too many EMIs, and because you don't know what else to do, you take it out on your spouse and worse, your children. Right?
Generally, what's lucrative is what appeals.
Unfortunately, right? I think what appeals can be made lucrative, right? This is the actual situation today, right? There's a little child, not little child, young man about 19 came to me yesterday in my office in Chennai, and he plays the mandolin very well. And his father wanted me to mentor him, and he said, "Aap to bahut badi musician ho," and whatever. I don't know what the father wants me to do. So I asked the child, I said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "Frankly, sir, I don't know." So I said, "You play really well. Do you want to be a musician?" He said, "I don't think so. Because if I become a career musician, then I will stop loving music." Right? And I said, "So what do you really want to do?" He said, "Actually, I don't know. I took commerce because, I thought I'll have more time, but I'm not enjoying double entry bookkeeping. And I'm now taken this choice. And unfortunately, he's one of those children who's done very well also. He got all 470 something. So he said, now they're telling me to do CA. I don't want to do CA. So what would you advise me to do?" So I said, "Frankly, I don't know, but why don't you take up a couple of projects in areas that you think might be appealing to you, interesting to you? Check out if these are areas that you want to." So he's enrolling. He's going to be doing one project on using, what is that? Our Internet of Things project, right? He wants to check out what IoT is, right? And he decided he will check out Professor Raghu Sundaram from NYU Stern School of Business is doing a project called the Economics of the Everyday, okay, where he's trying to see how we can set up micro ecosystems for local businesses so that you actually start understanding economics on a transactional everyday basis as opposed to only learning it theoretically. So he wants to do that. He said, "I want to try both. So whichever is more appealing can go in that direction." I said, "Go ahead for it." And I said, "What about music?" And then he looks at me and he smiles and he says, "That I will love for the rest of my life." Right? This is how it works, actually, right? There's a whole community curse where we are telling children, "No, you take the which will give you money," right? I think this generation, Gen Z plus, whatever they are now, I think they're Gen ZZZ, right, is looking at us and saying, do we do what we love? And it will fetch us the money that we need. And that is enough. It's like the child who said, "I don't want to live longer. I just want to live healthier and happier for as long as I'm alive," right? I think that's where we are. Rishi, I know you agree with me from wherever you are.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great question. And yeah, absolutely.
By the way, Rishi is also there for questions. So
Yeah.
he's, in fact, far more articulate at answering questions than I am.
So to both of you, maybe there's one very common thing which is going around and which we've kind of, as an educators, have also saying this, and to you, in some way, you are also saying. So I'm kind of standing up against you on that. Is that the whole point of letting the children do whatever they love, and contradictory to that, what we bring around them is what they love, right? So that's so they start saying, "I love environment," because they've been around, talked about these things, and then they say this is what it is. Versus, they also need to learn to do things which they don't love, or to your point of learning to learn, they will have to learn things which they've not come across. So
Is there a contradiction is what you're asking?
I'm saying, are we oversimplifying sometimes?
No.
Okay, do what you want to love, what you love, or rather, you also build that muscle, how to, do things which you don't love.
I think again, it's a great question. And I'm going to answer it simply by saying love itself is very complicated. Okay. Who said love is simple? Okay. So even in doing these projects, Ashu, the reason that it is set up with professors and with Akshay, leading a curation process is this is children think, oh, if it's going to be about AI, it's going to be some exciting thing. There's nothing exciting, right? The day-to-day, process to process, Akshay, you can take it over from me, is not at all interesting, right? Because you still have to do a research process. You still have to learn certain skills. There's no getting around it, right? A musician who becomes a musician at my level, right, has had to practice every single day for hours and hours, right? No, and classes, I would pretend that I had 103-degree temperature and my mother will say, class, wow, right? We all have to do a lot of things we don't love in order to master the things that we do love, right? Even in this, so it is not like saying, we just sent them all into one thing and saying, do what I like. It's not that, it's not a party, right? You still have to do a lot of very, very painstaking, because professors like Rishi, professors like Akshay have thought through how this has to be built. All we are saying is that the love has to come उसके भी बाद उसको पार करके डर के आगे भी, if there is still pyar over that, then we are meant to do that. Okay, even after taking that painstaking trouble of sitting with a group of people you don't like and you still are motivated, we've given you worksheets, it's a tutorial, so that project-based learning method works because of that. Project-based learning method doesn't mean you just let them all loose, right? There is a lot of maybe, and we are also professors, Ashu, at the end of the day, we don't like it if test papers are not given. Okay. Usme bhi dal diya. They have to still do those things, right? But all we're saying is, let them do it in a non-threatening. So the result and the outcome should be non-threatening, right? So school exams, that is already there. We are not saying remove that, right? But uske alawa, this part of it, let them explore without the threat of any penalty, right? If you do it well, you can go further. If you don't do it well, sure, it doesn't matter. But at least you've explored something.
Right. Yeah. You can go deep as deep as.
No, I think Anil covered it. And the only brief thought I wanted to add to that is loving something doesn't mean it has to be simple.
Yeah, that's all.
So if you love it, it still can be very challenging and you'll be forced to do things which are out of your comfort zone. But you start with the premise of it, this has been presented to me in a non-threatening, in a way which allows me to explore and discover, and then there will be challenges. So it makes you uncomfortable also, but you are approaching it with a, premise of at least, okay, I'm trying something which I want to do.
In cognitive psychology, there's this whole thing on approach goals versus avoidance goals, right? So a lot of life is about avoiding certain things. I want to avoid debt. I want to avoid conflict. I want to avoid a problem from happening, so that we end up doing certain things. Approach goals are very different. Approach goals are saying, I want to approach things that I like. I want to approach building things that I want. It's about approaching it with love. So I'm saying if we shift from the avoidance goal, right? Saying I need to study so that I don't fail, right? I need to study so that I can clear this entrance exam, versus saying that I really like this. So if we do this right, this becomes like Bonvita in your milk, right? So if I do it right, if I do a civil engineering project as a project-based learning method with an IIT, which is available on Kruu, and I discover that I actually love this, right? Imagine how much more motivation you'll actually get to do your physics well and actually clear your JEE and do well. If anything, it will only help, right? That's why I approach, not avoidance, right? Rishi wants to add anything to this.
Yeah, Rishi, feel free to chip in.
No, I disagree completely with what you both said. I mean, you don't need to necessarily enjoy something every minute if you love it and you want to understand it better.
Yeah.
A lot of people, thank you. A lot of people, I mean, a lot of students obviously, sign up to these projects and stuff like that. And I know there's an entire method to the, entire thing about, the, qualification, then, the top 10, et cetera, et cetera. When you get so many entries, right, I'm always curious to know what happens to the students who don't make the cut.
Excellent question.
And secondly, they represent, by the end of the day, they do fall into this education system, the schools and stuff. How do you bring in the schools to collaborate, saying, hey, your student is so bright, fair enough, didn't make the cut, but can you encourage this behavior?
By the way, would you like to join our team? And just asking this to you in public
love to.
because these
I'm a big fan.
yes, so these are the two wonderful questions. To the answer to the first question, I'll answer the second one because that's pertinent to me. The first one he can answer. Okay, Prakash, I'll repeat the question. So UCC, that's Vaidehi, and her question was, so the large number of students who end up doing the project, and clearly those who do well are getting assessed and they'll go further. But what happens to the large number who do not make the cut or, who are not assessed or maybe they didn't complete the project even or whatever, what happens to them, right? Do we just let them off? That was the question. And the second question was, schools, how do we get schools, given that the schools also suffer with certain systems, certain, come with differing shapes and sizes. How do we also incorporate them into understanding this approach? So the second one, Vaidehi, what we have begun and what's happening starting this month, actually September, is that we are starting a series of, I won't call it teacher training, but teacher-led projects, okay, where the teachers are also going to do some projects, at least in some of the schools which have volunteered for this. Especially, schools where they want all the teachers of standards 9 and upwards. They want the teachers also to do the projects. And I think that's a great way of doing it because, and again, not non-evaluative, because of course there will be, if you say anything is compulsory, people say, oh, but how we have portions, we have this, we have that, our life itself is a drag. So we of course we get those things, but the point is that all the time, right? So, and unless you also get your hands dirty doing this, you won't understand the value of it, right? So we are making those projects a little fun. So we're making it about what would make the classroom better, what would make teaching better, so I'm a STEM teacher, how do I make STEM learning a little more interactive without getting defensive, without getting vainglorious, how do I make it? And how can the colleges, how can the higher education professors help you in this process, right? So that way it is training without calling it training. It is project led. So that's the answer to this. So we're starting that from next month, and that's a beautiful cohort that's building for that. Arvind is here. Arvind is our group operations chief. I'm saying it despite him being in the room. It's free of cost. Okay. Number one, unlike the tickets for the concert in the dark. Okay. Yes, I know the joke. The answer to the first question is what happens to those who are not in merit or whatever?
Yes. No, so I think what students do is they don't end up taking just one project. So they end up taking 2 or 3 or 4 projects over the year, right? And what we have noticed is if students are interested and they put in the effort, so we're not always assessing only for the quality in some sense. If they're able to do something with effort, that comes out quite well. So those who end up not qualifying, let's say for a certain cohort, sometimes show up in others. And I think what Anil was saying earlier, even if you're not able to put the effort, right, there must be a reason behind it. That you're not enjoying the process, you're not understanding whether this is the right thing for you. So that process of elimination for us is equally valuable. So the feedback that goes to the student is equally valuable, something that they enjoy. Of course, they can make progress, they can connect with the faculty and so on, but something that they don't enjoy, that is an equally valuable feedback for the student that, okay, I didn't enjoy this project, let me now do another one. And then if I enjoy that, I'll put in the effort, so maybe I'll qualify. So that is the way we have thought about it. And of course, with teacher trainings, parents and teachers also get involved. So even if the student doesn't do so well, hopefully they continue the journey on the platform and keep engaging in more projects.
So one of the things that AI is helping us in, which we forgot to add, is that every child is actually being monitored. Every child who's on the platform is being monitored, meaning not monitored in a bad way, but being monitored and saying at what point did they drop off, right? And if by just studying data, I can, without having to rely on word of mouth, by just looking at data, I can tell you at what point they dropped off and what skill they spent maximum time on, right? So because the project itself is divided like that. And one of the things that's getting developed is a cognitive diagnostic tool, which will actually help the child, like an inventory, say, identify what they want to do, right? Try it out, and we are able to tell them that you managed to stay on course till this point and then drop off. Why don't you now reflect and see what happened, right? So sometimes it can be interpersonal. My friend fought with me. We decided that we don't want to do it. Ma'am scolded us in class because it was not looking nice, and we don't like that ma'am anyway. So we said, what the hell, we are not doing it. So, I mean, children, right? So they're going to come up with anything, and there's no point in then taking that to the professor and saying, your project saw 33% utilization. What can you do to make your utilization? But it's not the professor's fault at all, right? So, or the topic or anything. So I think this is where AI is going to be playing a very, very big role, right? Which is why Kruu, we are working a lot on the technology. This is where technology can help, right? That's the answer.
Yes, please.
My journey with Kruu started a year ago, maybe more. And having experienced students within schools, having done the project, I would say that as a mentor, I could see genuinely student progress.
Thank you.
I'm saying that because I have been very closely associated with all the projects in our schools, wherever I have been. So what began was that I have this feeling that until you don't do it, you will not know whether you're good at it or not. And also whether you want to really go ahead with a particular, like a chocolate cookie, you have to sample the chocolate cookie. If you go ahead and you say, no, I don't like it, and you don't get influenced by other people. So when we began the journey, a lot of students came in, and those students who were doing 90% in school, and everybody was, and they just phased out. And what was left behind, I kept motivating those 10% or 60%, those who were not doing well. And they said, ma'am, we do not know how we are going to do it. I really cannot do it. I said, let's trudge along. Let's trudge along. And they were the ones who actually got the certification.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And then came the time when the teachers came up to me as a counselor, ma'am, this child has suddenly started taking a lot of interest in science, a lot of this, and the parents started, ma'am, can we have more of this? Because now suddenly he's speaking. They were introvert students who could, and then they did see, and then some came to me later and said, ma'am, okay, I left behind because I said, why? Introspect, reflect. What did you do? So these are the skills we are teaching them. It's not just that you have to be resilient. Okay, can I participate in it next year? Of course you can. So what I'm trying to say is that in today's life, we are not only about academics, we're about teaching our children a lifetime skill that you have to keep on going and try and complete a project before you say no to it.
Thank you, Hina. Thank you so much for, I would say that was a braggadocious endorsement. Thank you very much. And all saying this on your own, right? I can pay her. This was, I mean, thank you.
I have two questions for you. Sir, the first question is only for you. I would like to know how do you define critical thinking in your words? And the second question is, based on your project learning base, project-based learning, how do you make math is more joyful learning? Okay, math, I will put it to Rishi. The first question, critical thinking in my words is the ability to parse out that part of the information that is irrelevant to the subject at hand and identifying the problem correctly. Okay. So it is like the example that the speaker said this morning about, you see a block of stone, you need to cut away the parts which are not David in order to come to David, right? So it is that ability to cut away the things which are irrelevant, right? The facts or, other observations which are irrelevant, and come to that which is relevant, which will help me identify the correct problem to be solved. Sometimes you're given a complex problem, you have to see what is the root cause, right? Like a doctor, right? So the patient is coming in with a fever, the patient is coming in with vomiting. The cause may be something else, right? So how do you, unless you get to the relevant information in a quick period of time, you're going to lose that patient. So that's critical thinking in my words, okay? To Rishi, the question is, how does Rishi believe that he can make maths fun?
Yes.
Can you give examples? Rishi, you're on the block.
Sorry, so the question is how specific examples of how to make maths fun in various classes?
In your examples. And this can be the last question because I think we're out of time. Yeah. How have you made maths fun, Rishi, in your classes?
I mean, I think I think it really depends on the kind of student audience that you have, right? Because what's fun for, say, let me use the class that Anil spoke about, mathematical reasoning, which is an introductory first year class. I think it's just building those connections, right? That you can use somewhat abstract mathematical language to describe and understand things that are very tangible for a student audience, in that objects that they've themselves encountered or engaged with or interacted with. So that's in terms of the content. In terms of the actual process, I think, as Anil again emphasized, the importance of collaboration. Getting students to work together in groups is, I mean, it's wonderful, because you can just see a complete change in their demeanor and the way they go about looking at, say, a mathematical worksheet, if they're getting the chance to work with 2 or 3 other people, as opposed to doing it individually. So I think collaborative learning is also an incredibly important part of, teaching these kinds of subjects, especially to students early on, because just the sheer momentum of having other people to engage and discuss these things with, and then have the instructor come in and then support them and see how the discussions are going, it just really carries the conversation forward in a way that might not work necessarily if it's on a one-on-one basis.
So more collaboration, more interactivity in the. Shall we can talk offline. So we are still around. Thank you so much to everybody who's part of the session. We hope you took away the child. Okay, please find the child in you. Okay, and those who have questions, comments to Akshay or me, please feel free. We are here. We can over a cup of coffee. I want to thank Dr. Rishi Vyas. It's a teaching day for him in Sri City today. To have made time. He's one of our more popular project mentors. His Kruu project just took off. But it's very sweet of you, Rishi, for making this time. Thank you so much. I hope you had lunch.
I did. And thank you all for, it was a wonderful session to be a part of.
Thank you. Thank you all.